Hello and welcome to Beyond the Headlines. I'm your host, Justin Chenette, and today's guest is Rye Russell, the General Manager of the Saco Drive-In. Welcome, Rye, to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to talk about this topic. It's something that a lot of people were talking about, in particular last year, with the Save the Drive-In effort, which was a huge thing. It really blew up in the media, in the community. But I really want to sort of take a step back and see how this whole timeline and process came about. What was that moment for you when you really found out, gosh, the doors could be shutting down if, this didn't happen, the campaign didn't happen, the Honda contest didn't come along? Like, what was the impetus behind the need for saving the drive-in?
Yeah, I mean, we knew at the beginning of 2013 that, it was make or break for, this year. We needed to pull it together or just weren't going to be able to move forward. So we tried some fundraising efforts. And when we kind of realized probably halfway through the year that just wasn't going to cut it.
Because you were fundraising for what?
Well, we had to convert to a digital projector. All of the 35 millimeter, that whole standard of showing movies has been eliminated. And so they needed all the theaters to convert to digital or realistically close down. Most of the companies that produce 35 millimeter have gone out of business or are running their last batches. So the supply has been eliminated effective immediately, really. There's no more. Whatever blank prints are made, that's it. And so we tried some fundraising efforts. We really needed to get to the $75,000, $80,000 mark in order to get a digital projector.
That's a lot of money.
It is. And so about halfway through the season, we realized that just wasn't going to happen. So we just kind of went the best we could, and we're going to make this the best season, and we kind of knew what was coming.
Let's stop there for a second. I mean, that must have been really difficult at that time, because this is something that you obviously really love to do. Right. So what were you feeling like? Oh my gosh, I'm really letting this down, because just to walk people through this process. Didn't you take the drive-in as a student or something at USM?
Yeah, I was still in college at the time.
Yeah.
When I took over. The land was for lease. It was going downhill rapidly. And I wanted to try to salvage what was left of it before too much damage was done. It's just I'm really passionate about it. I love the drive-in, and so I felt like a failure. It was really difficult, and it really did keep me up pretty much every night just trying to figure out how can we do this? How can we make it happen? And then all of a sudden came an answer.
And that answer came in the form of this huge national contest, and it was almost like all of a sudden this fell out of the sky almost, right?
Yeah. It was just randomly one day. I get a phone call with a Los Angeles area code, and I answered it, and the gentleman on the other end said, I represent the Honda Motor Company. We'd like to fly out tomorrow and come talk to you about your theater. And it's just like, sure, you want my credit card and social security as well? And he said, no, sir, no, that's not necessary. I'll meet you tomorrow if you're available.
Oh.
And I just couldn't believe it. So, at that time, I was desperate. I'd try anything. And sure enough, it was legitimate. And, he showed up at the theater, and he introduced kind of the foundation of what the contest was going to be. And it seemed like it was something that would really fit what we've already started building. We knew we had to leverage social media. I think at that time we had close to 15,000 fans. And so, he filmed, our interview, went back and pitched Honda as their advertising agency. And they just got the go-ahead. Let's do this. This is going to be really powerful.
And what was the contest? What can you walk us through sort of, anybody could compete, any drive-in in the state, or is it national?
It was national. Any drive-in in the country that hadn't already converted could apply to be a part of this contest. The contest was based on whoever received the most votes in a 30-day period of time. So the contest started in August, ended in September. It was 30 days of just nonstop. Our mindset going into this was, if we have 30 days to dictate the rest of the future of this theater, we're going to take it.
You ate and slept the drive-in, right? It was just a nonstop
I
thing.
mean, it really was, and and the whole staff, and realistically, I mean, we really have to thank the whole community. I mean, there were so many community members that had that same mindset,
Right.
Who took it upon themselves to say, okay, for the next 30 days, this is my job.
Because you have to click. It was like you can go online and you could like click every day. Right,
Yes,
to
yeah,
vote.
yeah. You could vote via text and online, and you could vote once a day. And I mean, we had people that they were calling me nonstop. Hey, I just found a loophole. Do it from your cell phone, your iPad, and your computer. So it was amazing the passion that everybody kind of had and rallied around it.
And why do you think that? And this is a really important piece because we're always talking about the economy and job creation and businesses and entrepreneurship in the state of Maine. Why do you think people responded the way they did for a for-profit business?
I think they realized what we stood for. Yes, it's a for-profit business, and in my business, it's the least profitable of the branches. It's really a business of love. I mean, we are very committed to preserving that theater and making the best of it. And I mean, yes, of course, we want it to be profitable, but I want it to be here. And I think people really started to see that when I took over. The menu had changed. Now you're not going to find a menu item for more than $5.
So, but what about the history piece of that? Because I mean, when I talk to people about the drive-in, it tends to be like nostalgia for them, right? So, what was that a really central piece in people's passion? I mean, real die-hard passion for clicking every. I mean, that's a commitment. It's not just asking, hey, can I have your vote for once? It's like a repetitive thing. So that was a big deal.
I mean, I think a lot of the commitment just comes from realistically, the economics of the business. Yeah, there's a lot of history there, but at the same time, nobody can really go out and have a vacation for $15 anymore. And for younger families, that seems to be the biggest draw. This is something that they can do with their whole family. And for me, I personally see that. My family, we came out and we went to the drive-in weekly. But no, I think the another big part of it is the drive-in's kind of like going into a time machine. Once you go through those gates. You don't have to worry about what's on the news. You don't have to worry about
It's an escape, right?
Yeah, it just from everything.
Yeah.
And I think that is what really can kind of touch people's lives.
And in this whole experience, did people like tell you some stories? I would imagine like there would be individuals from different generations. So you'd have like one set of individuals that may have like grown up with drive-ins, right?
Right.
And then the little kids, right, that are like, this is the first time, I'm experiencing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in all generations. And so, we can kind of start on one end. There's a gentleman, he's a customer service representative at Sam's Club. And he and his sister both worked at the Saco Drive-In when they were younger. And, the passion that he had for it. And, every day, I'd walk in there, pick up 50-pound bag of popcorn, barely get it onto the car, and he'd just be like, Rye, you're tired. He's like, but keep going. This isn't done. We've got this. And, so that would help kind of recharge those batteries. And this year we now have his granddaughter working the box office. So they've got those, the multi-generations that not just love the drive-in, but also work at the drive-in.
And did anybody sort of have an interesting story, like maybe grandparents now that are like, wow, I can't believe this place is still around? Because I'm sure for them it was really a way of sort of tapping into some memories that they made when they were younger.
Absolutely. There's one individual from Georgia, Melissa. She came up to me, and she was there a couple times a week throughout the whole campaign. And she would tell me, she's like, we came here, we vacationed here, and I love this place, and I will be here every day to help you fight for it.
Right.
And she and I have got to become really good friends now. And it's those types of things that are really powerful. It's those types of things that even when the energy was low, kind of recharge those batteries to move
Right.
forward. And in terms of, kind of the younger families, it was very much based on the economics. We're struggling. We can't go to the movie theater. We can't go to the amusement parks. Even going to the beach, if you're going to, take food to the beach, it's hard.
And it wasn't just in Maine, right? Because you mentioned Georgia, so I'm just, that's kind of interesting. Like, there was probably people.
There's people all over the country.
Yeah.
We created Save the Drive-In T-shirts, and we were shipping those all across the country. Oregon, California, Arizona, Texas, Florida. Just literally every part of the country we were shipping T-shirts to daily. And it just kind of made me realize, what the whole team realized, that, the drive-in means so much all across the country. We knew it had a strong meeting here locally, and maybe in New England. But when we were shipping hundreds of T-shirts all across the country, it really kind of showed what this theater meant, and kind of made it, okay, so this isn't just Maine's oldest drive-in. This isn't just New England's favorite drive-in. This is America's drive-in. And we went in with that mindset, and we knew we had to win.
The second oldest in the country?
The second oldest still operating in the country.
And not only just individuals that have come forward, but let's talk a little bit about the competition during this contest, because, it wasn't a regional contest. So what I find interesting is you had to, compete against all these other places, right? And do you remember how many drive-ins participated? It
was in the 300 range.
Wow.
It was a national contest, drive-ins all across the country, and realistically, this was a problem that affected every single one.
Yeah.
And so, it was not an easy competition, because all of these theaters were literally fighting for their lives. Fighting for their lives, fighting for their memories, second, third generation owners. It was something that really touched a lot of families, which also made it difficult
to run against them,
right?
Yeah.
It did. It was, not that, I was very proud and I was honored to bring that to Saco. But at the same time, we were, kind of a band of drive-in owners, almost kind of became a family. And, it was really tough. And to this day, a lot of us are still in touch. A lot of us are still trying to, help some of the other ones that didn't win, try to fundraise, or try to get some used equipment from hardtop theaters. But it's just everybody. We knew that we kind of had to work together, because the whole industry could die.
Right.
And so it was a really tough time.
But what were those theaters that were in maybe more populated areas? Because when you think of a little theater in Saco, Maine, right, competing against, I would imagine, much bigger theaters, or at least much bigger population centers all across the country. I can't even fathom, why they, one of them wouldn't win or something. Can you talk a little bit about what, some of the competitors that you mentioned that became kind of family? But those are from big areas that were competing.
Yeah, there were some drive-ins that had more population in their hometown than we had in the state of Maine.
Oh my goodness.
And we knew that going in, and we knew it was not going to be easy. But the mindset we had was, there was kind of two ways to go about this. Mass communication, get everybody to vote once, or consistent communication and get a smaller population of people to vote every single day on multiple devices.
Right.
And we had to go that route.
Right.
Some of these other ones, it was very much, okay, we can blast this out once and we're going to make the top 10.
Right.
We had the mindset where we need to blast this 8 times a day across all mediums, and we really need everybody committed to doing this in every single day.
And that's an interesting point just for entrepreneurship. Utilizing 21st century technology, utilizing social media and the web platform. Do you have a piece of advice maybe for other budding entrepreneurs, the importance of how to engage with an audience that way? Because there are some businesses maybe in Biddeford and Saco, Old Orchard Beach, around here that may not use social media or other things. Is that a very essential tool for budding business owners to do?
I think so. it's a great way to have that two-way dialogue with multiple people at one time. You know, and I mean, there's times where, you know, if you want to add something onto your business or you want to take something away, it's great to have those conversations, have those dialogue, and have your core customer base a part of the decision. Ultimately, the decision is yours, and you know, as a business owner, you know what the right decision is for your business. But you know, you can make a decision based on opinion, and rather than, you know, just kind of going at it blindly and, you know, kind of hope it turns out well. I mean, a lot of people talk about how important social media is, but really it's just about being genuine. If you're not genuine, it's not going to work.
Like a conversation.
Yeah,
kind of, right?
I mean, you're just using it to post up an advertisement, it's not going to benefit you. But if you want to have that dialogue and you actually care, that's when it'll work.
So you would maybe credit social media as a big piece of the win.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we already knew, in order to save the drive-in to the point that we had before this contest, we needed to know what people wanted. We needed to know what was bringing them there, what was going to continue to bring them there. So I mean, half the work was done. We had already built such a large audience on there because we needed to do the research and we needed to make sure that the drive-in could be potentially profitable, or at least at some point carry its own bills. You know, as much as I loved it, there, you know, I knew, and especially after last year, there was going to be a time where, you know, my business and my personal income could only go so far. You know, year after year after year of contributing to just kind of, you know, the things that the drive-in required, you know, eventually it was just going to drain us. And so, I mean, we knew that we had to make changes, and realistically the only way to make those changes was to get this digital projector.
So let's get to the point where, you know, you've spent all this time and money and effort to have basically a month of nonstop. Let's get out the vote, right?
Yes.
Condensing like a typical campaign season down, very much so, just a couple weeks essentially. But how did you find out about the win? Like, this is really exciting. Like, how did that moment that you actually found out, yes, you got the digital projector and your drive-in is saved?
Yeah. It was, so I received a phone call at the end of the competition, and it was a gentleman said he was from the Associated Press, and clearly during that time, you know, there was a lot of press. You know, and we spoke to mediums all across the country, and you know, they wanted to talk about the contest and you know, how do we think we did, and what happens if we don't win. And so, you know, I said, okay, yeah, you know, that's fine. Meet me at the theater. And so they're getting ready, and I mean, part of, you know, I wanted to think that they were going to pull some sort of trick on me, but at the same time, I didn't want to go in having that mindset. Right. And then, you know, the reporter came over and started asking me questions, and I said, okay, you know, that's probably not what this is. You know, it's ironic that the vehicle they came in was a Honda Odyssey.
Right. But they're an AP reporter.
Right. You know, so, you know, and I mean, she pulled it off well, and I talked to Alicia just a couple days ago. You know, she's going through, she's like, okay, so, you know, I want to talk to you about this, I want to talk to you about that. And I was just like, okay, you know, that's fine, that's pretty standard. And so during the interview, you know, she eventually asked me, you know, what happens if you don't, you know, you talked about this contest, what happens if you don't win? And, you know, I just explained, I said, well, you know, that'll, unfortunately, when we lock the doors in October, be the last time they ever come unlocked. And she's like, so I guess now is the best time to tell you that I'm not actually a news reporter. I represent the Honda Motor Company, and America chose to save your drive-in. Oh my God. And I just froze. I didn't know what to say, and you know, I started crying, and you know, they're just, you know, she looked at me and she's like, oh, and Mark Tripp was the creative director who I first met, and we shot the commercials with, and she said, oh, you know, also just want you to know, Mark Tripp's watching you live. And so he came over with his whole film crew from Saco Bay, from Saco Bay Tackle. They're apparently all camped out there, waiting for this to conclude. And just a convoy of Honda Odysseys came in. They're all crying, you know. So it was extremely emotional, super powerful. So I quickly got on the phone with the entire staff. I said, "Look, I need you to get down to the theater. We've got a lot to discuss." And I didn't really tell them anything about what was going on. And so and I also we wanted to have a community party. I mean, this was going to be okay. We're going to have this party, and then I'm going to go to sleep. And
it was wasn't it like a surprise? I mean, obviously you found out that day,
right?
So, but you had planned a party or something like right then. You're like, okay, let's get together.
As soon as I could collect myself and actually say something, we just kind of looked at each other. I was like, "So, can we have a party?" And they're like, "Yeah, let's do it."
Right.
So we quickly we called all the press and, "Hey, look, we won. Be more than happy to do interviews at this party, but let's get this party out there, and let's really thank the entire state and the entire country for putting this together. Let's throw a really cool party." And so we did, but at the same time, I really wanted to have that moment with the staff and their families before we opened up to the public. And that was a super emotional time. I mean, the entire staff, they took the window paint and all of their cars were painted, text, vote 7, and save the Saco Drive. And everybody was just so committed. Between us, there wasn't a dry eye of the staff. It was super powerful, super emotional. And that's the great thing about the Saco Drive-In is they're just as committed to the theater itself and the customers, just as I am. I mean, the staff. I mean, we've all kind of become a family, and a lot of it had to do with this. Was we weren't sleeping. We were awake 24/7, making sure that we did everything we could to put this together. So the emotions were unreal. It just you can't really put into words what that feeling is, because there's nothing that really compares. In terms of drive-ins, probably the only thing you could compare it to is the Super Bowl, but it happens once in a lifetime instead of every year. There's really no way for drive-ins to compete with each other, or just to kind of compete. And I wish it wasn't a survival of the fittest type of competition. But that's what it was. It was a very much a survival of the fittest.
And now what at this point, are there still theaters that didn't win this contest that are having to close their doors?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We've lost probably 25%, 30% of our theaters.
Wow. Across the country?
Across the country, yeah. And that goes for all independent theaters, not just drive-ins. But that number is going to quickly increase, and we should see the number of drive-ins be cut in half by the end of this year, and maybe in half again.
Is that still because of the digital conversion that's needed?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. It's a lot of money. I mean, the projector alone is about $85,000. If you're in New England like we are, you've only got a short season, and it's not something that can't be climate controlled. So you need to have it air conditioned. You need to have it heated. And you need to kind of rebuild the housing area for that equipment. So by the time everything's all said and done, I mean, the entire project could easily run $150,000 or more.
Right. And who has that lying around?
And and these theaters just don't have that. When like for us, when you're operating on $15 a car, and 85% of that ticket revenue goes right back to Hollywood, you're making $1, $2 a vehicle. There's just no way to be able to do that on your own. So drive-ins and there's drive-ins in less populated areas than we have even, and we're a small theater. So those theaters, they're just not going to be able to do it. And so it's tough. And like I said earlier, it's almost like kind of losing family members. And seeing just you get close to those people, and they share their stories about they're the great-grandchildren of the founder and the gentleman that built the theater, and they're going to lose that. And so that was really tough. So I mean, as awesome and wonderful as it was winning that day, there's also probably, I think the next day kind of hit the solemn part of the whole thing of, okay, this is great, but still not done. I've got some friends I got to help out.
And there's still some of those friends, right? In Maine, there's still a couple other drive-in theaters.
Yes, yeah. There's a family in Madawaska, great family. husband and wife and their daughter actually lives in Scarborough, right near I do, and so they come down, and so I'm working very closely with them, to try to see if we can find some used regular cinema equipment and can we adapt that and make alterations for them. Don Brown from Skowhegan, he's been a long time movie theater operator, so we're working closely with him, and then of course Bridgeton, John Tavani and I are very good friends, and he's very fortunate that his company is also bigger than the theater, and he did have the resources to pull together and build a really nice theater in Bridgeton, and so they had to do 2 digital projectors. But they've got the lakes right there, so they've got a great program together.
So Skowhegan and Madawaska, though, they're still having to raise money and stuff.
Yes, yeah, they're still having a very hard time. And the other problem is because of their lack of population up there, they're only operating Fridays and Saturdays. So now you take how hard our season is, and now you condense that by another 80%, and that's what they have to operate with. But at the same time, that population should still have a drive-in.
Right. And something that I found very interesting is sort of coming out of this whole experience and trying to recap it, right? One of the people that worked really closely with you, Camille Smalley, who was an integral part of the Saco Museum,
yes.
Wrote a book, which is real. I love books. So
right.
It's perfect to go to the beach. I just love that. And it's called the Saco Drive-In Cinema Under the Main Sky. And when I was reading through it, it was just really fascinating to see all the stories.
Yes.
Because it basically collected all these stories from, random people from across the country that this was a really big deal for them. But also sort of, summarize sort of a recap of this timeline and sort of what it was like for you, kind of what we were talking about. But one of the things I really got from this book was the importance of saving it. And if there was something to tell people that maybe watching that helped save the Saco Drive-In, what would you tell them right now? Because now that you have the digital projector, the drive-in is saved, we've gone through the hard part, what would you tell them that, all the countless people that have their own stories to tell, maybe not just in this book, but across our state and across the country, what would you tell them?
Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, there's not much you can say. I mean, just the appreciation that you have and the accomplishment that you feel to be able to pull this together. There's just nothing quite like it. And I mean, Camille did a really good job of capturing what the drive-in meant to me, what the drive-in meant to owners prior to me, and what the drive-in means to families of multiple generations. It's a really great book, and just you'll see some similarities in the drive-in owners from the very first one all the way up to when you get to me. There must be a certain kind of crazy that goes in with operating a drive-in. Right,
because now it's the 75th anniversary of the
yes.
Saco Drive-In, because it was opened in, 1939?
1939.
Oh my gosh. So wrapping up our time together, what's next? You feel confident that the drive-in will be around for many years to come?
Now that we have the digital projector, there's nothing we won't do to preserve this theater and make sure that it reaches the pinnacle that which it was probably in the 50s and exceed that. So I mean, there's a lot of work to do. Every year we're constantly putting more and more into it. But we're not done.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Fry. It's just been great to talk to you about this. And congratulations again. This has been great.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Beyond the Headlines. I'm your host, Justin Chenette. It's great to be back on the air. And if you want to suggest possible topics for the show, possible interviews, you can go to my website at justinchenette.com or find me on Facebook at facebook.com/JustinChenette. So this has been Beyond the Headlines, and from everyone here, stay tuned and stay connected.